Welcome to the Chess.com podcast. Welcome to this fifth Chess.com podcast. In today's podcast, we're going to discuss the two knights versus lone king endgame, which is a theoretical draw unless black plays incorrectly. And then we're going to look at a very nice puzzle where two knights win out against a black king. So looking at the screen now, we can see that the black king is checkmated. So this is the kind of position that White would want to get his knights into. He could, of course, always have the knight here that's on F6 on E6, or even here on H6, as long as it kind of covers these two squares. Okay, so let's have a look at this position. So White's going in for the kill. The black king is already trapped in the corner. So how should White try and progress here if he's going to try and force black into a mistake? Well, certainly move to H6 is no good because that's an instant stalemate, and the same is also true of moving the knight to E7. So this knight here on F5 is going to stay where it's placed, and we're going to move the knight on E6. So the knight on E6 comes to F8. And black only has one option, that's to move his king to G8. White has to keep his knight safe, so he takes it away to D7. King goes back to H8, it's only square again. The second knight here comes into D6. This first knight is looking to go from here to here to here. The first knight is looking to do this triangular movement. The king goes to G8, and then that first knight comes back to F6. It's in its final position, and now it's up to black. If black is playing a blitz game or he's not concentrating, he may play king H8, which would allow knight F7 and mate. However, if the black player is thinking and does have time, then he's unlikely to play this king to H8 position, and instead will just play king F8, and he escapes. White doesn't progress, and it's a drawn position. But if you're White, and if you are playing against a weak opponent or opponent short on time, who isn't claiming the win, then this is an example of the end game position you want to try and get into. So that's the end of the first section of this podcast. Next we're going to look at a very nice two knights mate. As promised, here's the second half of the fifth podcast, and we're going to be looking at a puzzle by Alfred de Musset. I'm sorry if I've pronounced that incorrectly. Now, I put this position to Fritz, as I always do, to check these solutions and check these problems, and Fritz didn't instantly come up with the mate in 3. I'll explain why in a second, and came up with a mate in 5, which I'm quickly going to run through because it's a nice mate anyway. In this position, Fritz chose the move rook to B7, and there are a number of moves here, still all mating in 4. Effectively, we'll say the knight to C6, and now it's all forced. The knight on G4 comes to F6 with check. The black king only has one square, which is D8. The second knight comes in, goes to F7 again. The black king's restricted, only has the C8 square available. The F7 knight comes to D6, checking the king and also protecting the rook. The black king back to D8, and then rook to D7, and we have checkmate, which is a beautiful solution, but not the correct one. It's not the mating 3. And I think that the reason that Fritz chose the mate in 5 rather than the mate in 3 instantly is because it recognises a 2 knights versus king as a drawn position until its engines worked through all the possible scenarios. So it was just avoiding that end game. But the end game does involve the rook sacrifice and the 2 knights mating, and let's see what it is. In this position we can see that the black king only has 1 square available, which is to d8. So if white can take this d8 square away from black, then the knight on g4 can come in to f6 and it would be mate. So one way of doing that is to play rook d7. The rook stops the king from moving and forces a knight move. If the knight came to any square whatsoever, let's say c6, then instantly we can move that g4 knight up and that would be mate. So black can go the long way about doing this and take on d7, and then we have the second knight coming in from e5 to c6. Again, this knight, its sole job is to stop the king from moving, and this knight here stops the black king from getting out. So it's again a forced black move with his knight, and it doesn't really matter which square he comes to. He comes to c5. I quite like the idea of him coming to f6, just because then when we do play the knight to c6, it's a mate with 2 knights. Well, I hope you've enjoyed that, and you've seen 2 positions where the king can be mated against 2 knights, although with correct play this should never occur in tournament practice. You need either a pawn or another piece on the board to make it work. Okay, thank you very much for watching this Chess.com podcast. I hope you're enjoying these podcasts, and I look forward to producing many more in the future. Thank you for watching the Chess.com podcast.